So when you really, really read and sink into Jung and feel and explore and even that aspect of psychotherapy and not shamanism, you'll find that he's really talking about gods and goddesses, and he's very clear about this. So he's not necessarily talking about gods and goddesses in the religious sense, or saying that they are opposed to, for example, to those figures, exclusive figures you might find in monotheistic religions. Actually, he says, I think he makes it clear that the figure of the Great Mother is, that Great Mother is present in the figure of the Virgin Mary, and that she's a counterpart really to the great God figure, male God figure, a forgotten one, but a counterpart, the figure of Sophia, also in the Gnostic traditions, that balances this purely masculine aspect that you find in non-Gnostic approaches of, for example, the Christian religion. The Shekinah, a feminine aspect also in Jewish culture. I'm no specialist, of course, and I'll leave on those aspects to the specialists to correct or specify. I'm just talking about basic principles. So archetypes really represent the same things. One thing both shamanism and also Jungian psychology make clear is that those gods and goddesses have to be honored on some level. You don't have to be a religious person, you don't have to fear really the presence of those gods or great archetypes. They have to be recognized within the human being and integrated in order for us to have a good relationship with them. If you you profoundly reject the aggressive aspect of life and within yourself, whether, for example, in the destructive aspects of the Great Mother, presence, for example, in the goddess Kali, many people know, or in Hecate, the Greek goddess, or in some Celtic goddesses, or in the figure, for example, of the great Kayach, the kind of goddess, witch in some Celtic traditions and the Scottish traditions, Celtic Scottish traditions. If you reject that destructive aspects or that, then you are also rejecting it inside of yourself. If you're rejecting it inside of yourself, you are likely to be possessed by it in some form. For example, if you are a woman. In a man, if you reject that, then some of your actions may be very violent, not necessarily physically, maybe physically, when something is really too much, and you go, what's happened to me? Why was I so violent? Could be even verbally. In a way, you've been possessed by this because you've rejected it and you don't know it exists within yourself. So how does that relate to gods and goddesses? In the ancient times, and you can find that also in other living traditions, in the Orisha traditions of Nigeria, in some shamanic traditions where one honors the warrior aspects, feminine and masculine. You could say in Vodou, you could find that in other animistic tradition. In the North's pantheon and new pantheon, through the aspects, for example, of Odin or Thor or Tyr, the god Tyr. Those warrior aspects with different faces between those different gods will be honored. In the living traditions, honoring them will allow us to be in good relationship, and it will prevent us from being, in a way, possessed. That is kind of that current of energy takes us over. So we have to know it's there and integrate it. And our human journey is integration of this. Of course, not to the same level for every person, and not all people have to explore the depth and breadth of those archetypes, but we all have to integrate many gods and goddesses or archetypes. I think I was mentioning this is not really understood by neo-Jungian, some neo-Jungian traditions. They think those are kind of symbols or mindsets in the psyche. It's true, that is one level of them. But another level is those are also independent sources of consciousness within creation. Being in good relationship with them allows us to be in good relationship with the world. It allows us to be in a good ecological relationship within ourselves, but also outside. Now there are huge sources of energy, and if you really take the step of being a shamanic, deep practice in shamanic practice, I'm not speaking of beginner practice. You are really safe with this in beginner practice. If you've gone deep practice, those sources of energy are, you relate to them through patience, through honoring, through progressivity, in many cases through learning this with a more experienced practitioner or a tradition, someone who knows the contact with these beings. Some people do approach it that way. Now, if you in most cases you don't really establish that contact that easily. If you were to, make some huge ritual to contact some warrior aspect or some great goddess of something that represents some aspects of the feminine, you might be receive really some aspect of that current, and in many cases it's a fairly sobering experience, because you will, if it really happens, you will realize the depth and breadth and of those things, and that actually our consciousness as human beings needs to adapt to it. So this is the value of progressivity, this is the value of patience and approaching with knowledge, some level of knowledge, and ritual, perseverance, in some cases guidance. I'm not saying it's impossible to do otherwise. Many magicians and so-called witches do this, especially new generation witches, and you can learn. In many cases you won't contact it, you will contact many more manageable levels of this. So, and then you can also learn through really severe experience. This is not without interest, but it might take a lot of time to integrate the experience within yourself. Of course, it is one path. Now, being respectful, approaching in a more progressive way is definitely a kinder route towards yourself. Okay, I think this is what I wanted to share about this. I hope this is helpful, and those kind of similarities, differences between spirit allies, archetypes, gods and goddesses are a bit clearer. Do not hesitate if you have any questions. I wish you very good practice. Blessings.